Welcome, dear travelers, to Medieval Sleep Tales, where we open the gates to history's quieter moments and invite you to rest within them. Tonight, our journey carries us to a place of magnificent stone and enduring warmth, a medieval castle. Evening settles over its ancient walls. This is not a tale of conquest or courtly intrigue, but something far gentler. Tonight, we'll experience the peaceful rhythms of castle life as day surrenders to night, the lighting of torches along corridor walls, the final preparations in bustling kitchens, the closing of heavy wooden doors against the autumn chill, and the settling of souls into the comfort that only thick stone walls and glowing fires can provide. Whether you're seeking peaceful sleep, a companion for evening study, or simply a moment's escape into a slower, softer world, you're welcome here. Let yourself settle deeply into comfort. Close your eyes if you wish. Breathe slowly and let the castle embrace you. Together, we'll walk these ancient halls, discover the warmth hidden in stone chambers, and find the profound peace that comes when night falls over a medieval castle. Let the gentle rain on battlements, the crackling of hearth fires, and the soft voices of those who lived these lives long ago carry you into tranquil rest. From all of us at Medieval Sleep Tales, welcome to a night in a medieval castle. Part 1. Twilight descends upon the castle. The sun hangs low beyond the western hills, painting the autumn sky in shades of amber and rose. From the castle's highest tower, the view stretches across rolling countryside patchwork fields harvested to stubble, forests ablaze with turning leaves, and the silver ribbon of a river winding through the valley below. The air grows cooler as afternoon surrenders to evening, carrying with it the earthy scent of wood smoke from the village chimneys and the sharper tang of approaching rain. Within the castle's thick stone walls, the transition from day to night follows ancient rhythms. The great iron bell in the chapel tower rings out vespers, its deep voice rolling across courtyards and through corridors, calling the faithful to prayer and marking the end of the working day. The sound resonates in your chest, familiar and comforting, a voice that has marked these hours for centuries. In the outer bailey, the day's final activities wind toward completion. Grooms lead the last horses into the stables, speaking softly to the animals as they settle them into stalls lined with fresh straw. The warm smell of hay and horse mingles with the cooler evening air. A stable cat watches from a beam above, tail twitching lazily, while mice rustle in the grain stores below. The head groom pauses to check each stall, ensuring water troughs are filled and stable doors secured against the night. His movements are unhurried, performed with the ease of countless repetitions. Near the castle kitchens, a final delivery arrives, a farmer's cart laden with root vegetables from the autumn harvest. Turnips, parsnips, and carrots, still bearing traces of earth, are unloaded into the storage cellars, their earthy sweetness promising hearty winter meals to come. The kitchen master inspects the delivery with a practiced eye, nodding approval before the farmer receives his payment and departs through the gatehouse, eager to reach home before full darkness falls. The great gatehouse itself begins its evening transformation. Guards change shifts, fresh sentries ascending to the battlements, while those who have stood watch since dawn gratefully descend. They stamp cold feet and flex stiff fingers, breathing into cupped hands as the temperature drops. The massive wooden gates, reinforced with iron bands that have weathered countless seasons, stand open still, but the smaller postern door has been unlocked, ready for the gate's closing once the last travelers are accounted for. A merchant and his apprentice arrive just as the gates prepare to close, seeking shelter for the night. The gatekeeper recognizes them from previous journeys and waves them through with a familiar nod. The merchant's packhorse clatters across the cobblestones, its panniers laden with bolts of fine wool and carefully wrapped packets of imported spices. They'll stable their animals and seek accommodation in the castle's guest quarters, grateful for the safety of thick walls and the promise of a warm meal. As twilight deepens, torches are lit throughout the castle. Young servants move methodically along the corridors, using long tapers to ignite the pitch-soaked brands mounted in iron sconces along the walls. Each torch catches with a soft whoosh, spreading warm golden light that dances across ancient stone. The flickering illumination transforms familiar passages, creating pools of brightness separated by islands of shadow that shift and sway with every draft. In the great hall, preparations for the evening meal reach their culmination. Long trestle tables have been assembled, their rough wooden surfaces scrubbed clean and spread with linen cloths, for the high table where the Lord and his family will dine. Lower tables for the household stand ready, plain but sturdy, polished smooth by years of use. Benches are arranged, cups and ewers placed, and the salt cellars positioned with care. The massive silver one at the high table, marking status and honor, and simpler wooden ones for the lower tables. The hall itself is a magnificent space, soaring 2 stories high with great oak beams supporting the roof above. Tapestries hang along the walls, their woven scenes depicting hunts and biblical stories, their colors rich even in the flickering torchlight. These textiles serve dual purposes: beauty for the eye and insulation against the cold that seeps through stone. Even now, as autumn settles in, you can feel how they soften the chill and muffle sound, wrapping the hall in warmth. At the hall's far end, the great fireplace large enough to roast an entire ox blazes with split logs. The fire tender has built it skillfully, arranging wood to burn long and steady through the evening meal and beyond. Flames leap and dance, casting moving shadows across the floor's rush-covered stones. The rushes themselves have been freshly laid this morning, mixed with dried lavender and meadowsweet that release gentle fragrance when crushed underfoot. From the kitchens beyond comes a symphony of purposeful activity. This separate building, connected to the great hall by a covered passageway, houses a world of heat and industry. 3 great hearths blaze along one wall, each tended by experienced cooks who have spent the afternoon roasting meat on iron spits, baking bread in clay ovens, and simmering pottage in massive iron cauldrons suspended over the flames. The head cook, a woman of substantial presence whose authority is absolute in this domain, moves between stations with the confidence of a battlefield commander. She tastes, adjusts seasonings, issues crisp instructions to her staff, and maintains perfect awareness of every dish in preparation. Her assistant chops herbs with rhythmic precision: parsley, sage, rosemary, their fresh scent, cutting through the heavier aromas of roasting meat and baking bread. A young scullery maid turns the spit over one hearth, her face flushed from heat and effort, while a boy of perhaps 10 carefully bastes the roasting venison with a mixture of wine and herbs. The meat glistens in the firelight, its surface crisping to golden perfection, promising tender richness within. Nearby, loaves of bread emerge from the oven, their crusts dark and crackling, their centers soft and steaming. The scent of fresh bread fills the kitchen, warm and yeasty, perhaps the most comforting smell in all creation. At another station, a cook prepares a fish-course river trout baked in clay with butter and wild garlic, a delicacy that will grace the high table. The silvery fish have been cleaned and prepared with care, stuffed with herbs gathered from the castle's kitchen garden before the first frost claimed the tender plants. When baked, the clay shell will crack away, leaving perfectly cooked flesh that flakes at the touch of a knife. Serving staff begin carrying dishes through the covered passage to the great hall. They move in practiced coordination, bearing platters and bowls with steady hands, despite the weight and heat. Steam rises from the vessels, carrying scents that make stomachs rumble in anticipation. The servers know their roles precisely, who serves the high table, who the household knights, who the lower tables where servants and men-at-arms will dine. In the solar, the private living chamber reserved for the Lord's family, a different sort of preparation unfolds. This room, located on the castle's second floor and accessible by a narrow stone staircase, offers both comfort and privacy. Large windows fitted with expensive glass panes catch the last of the daylight, though heavy curtains stand ready to be drawn against the night's chill. The glass itself is a luxury, each small pane set in lead, slightly warped and bubbled, casting interesting patterns of light. A maidservant arranges cushions on the carved wooden chairs near the solar's own fireplace. This smaller hearth has been lit as well, its fire built high to chase away the autumn damp that creeps through stone. The flames illuminate the room's treasures: a writing desk of polished oak, a clothes chest bound with brass, and along one wall, a bed with embroidered hangings that can be drawn close to create a warm, private chamber within the chamber. The lady of the castle sits near the window, making the most of the fading light as she works her needle through a piece of fine embroidery. Her ladies-in-waiting gather nearby, some working on their own sewing, others preparing for the evening meal. One carefully folds a linen wimple, another arranges the lady's jewels in a small wooden casket. Their conversation flows quietly, punctuated by gentle laughter and the soft rustle of fabric. A young page enters, bowing respectfully before announcing that the evening meal will soon be served. The lady sets aside her embroidery, smoothing her gown of deep green wool trimmed with vair, the soft, patterned fur that marks her status. Her ladies rise as well, checking each other's dress and headdresses before they descend to the great hall. Their footsteps echo softly in the stone stairwell, accompanied by the whisper of long skirts trailing across worn steps. In the chapel, Vespers prayers conclude. This sacred space, built into the castle structure with the same solid stone as the defensive walls, offers a haven of peace and contemplation. Stained glass, windows glow like jewels in the dying light ruby reds and sapphire blues depicting the saints and the Holy Family. Candles flicker on the altar, their light reflecting off the gilded cross and silver vessels used for the Mass. The castle chaplain, an elderly man whose gentle voice has led prayers here for 3 decades, makes the final blessing. The small congregation household members who have paused their evening preparations to observe this holy hour crosses themselves and rises from the prayer benches. They file out quietly, returning to their duties with the calm that comes from this daily ritual of devotion. A young monk who serves as the chaplain's assistant remains behind, carefully extinguishing some candles while leaving others burning. He moves with practiced reverence, treating each task as a form of prayer. The chapel will remain open through the night, a place where anyone troubled in sleep or spirit can come to find solace in the presence of the holy. As darkness settles more completely over the castle, the rhythm of evening life establishes itself. In the armory, where weapons and armor are stored and maintained, the master-at-arms makes his final rounds. He checks that swords are properly oiled against rust, that mail shirts hang straight on their wooden forms, that the tournament armor is securely locked away. A single lantern illuminates his inspection, casting elongated shadows across shields bearing the Lord's coat of arms. The castle's well, located in the inner courtyard, sees a final flurry of activity as servants draw water for the night. The wooden bucket descends into darkness with a creak of rope and pulley, returning moments later, heavy with cold, clear water from the deep spring far below. This water, tested daily to ensure its purity, is precious safe drinking water that won't sicken those who consume it, a blessing not to be taken lightly. Bucket after bucket is hauled up, filling ewers for chambers, cauldrons for the kitchens, troughs for the stables. Young boys carry wood to the various chambers, where fires burn or will soon be lit. Their arms are laden with split logs and bundles of kindling, carefully dried and stored in the castle's woodsheds. They know which chambers take priority: the Lord's solar, the great hall, the guest quarters where the merchant and his apprentice will sleep. The wood itself is predominantly oak, dense and slow-burning, chosen to provide steady heat through the long autumn night. In the mews, where the Lord's hunting birds are kept, a falconer makes his evening visit to his charges. The hawks sit hooded and calm on their perches, feathers gleaming in the lantern light. He checks each bird with gentle expertise, ensuring none show signs of illness or distress. A peregrine falcon, the Lord's particular pride, turns its head toward the sound of her keeper's voice. Though hooded and unable to see, she knows him by sound and scent, remaining calm under his practiced touch as he checks her jesses and ensures her perch is secure. The castle dogs, great mastiffs, and smaller hunting hounds have already settled in their kennels for the night, though a few household favorites remain in the great hall, knowing that scraps from the evening meal will likely come their way. An old hound lies near the great fireplace, chin resting on paws, amber eyes watching the preparations with the patient wisdom of a dog who has witnessed countless such evenings. From the battlements, the view transforms as night claims the landscape. The last traces of sunset fade from the western sky, replaced by deepening blue scattered with early stars. Below, the village shows, scattered pinpricks of light candles and small fires visible through window openings and cracks in door frames. Smoke rises from every chimney, the scent of burning wood carrying on the breeze that stirs the castle banners. The guards on watch move slowly along the walk, their footsteps steady and measured. They know every stone, every gap in the crenellations, every spot where the wall catches the wind or shelters from it. Their duty is vigilant, but not anxious. This is a time of peace, and the greatest dangers are the weather and the dark itself. Still, they watch, maintaining the traditions of guardianship that define their role. A light rain begins to fall, so gentle at first that it's more felt than seen. The guards pull their wool cloaks tighter, hoods raised against the moisture. The rain whispers against stone, a sound that will intensify as the night progresses, but for now remains soft and almost soothing. The battlements gleam weightily in the torchlight, and the air fills with the fresh scent of rain on ancient stone, earth, and autumn leaves. Inside the castle walls, the evening meal begins. In the great hall, the household gathers lords and ladies at the high table, knights and senior servants at lower tables, arranged in careful hierarchy that everyone understands and accepts. The Lord enters with his family, and all rise respectfully until he gestures for them to be seated. The chaplain says grace, his voice carrying through the hall, giving thanks for the bounty about to be received. Then the serving begins. Platters arrive bearing the roasted venison, its surface crackling and aromatic with herbs. Bowls of pottage thick with barley, root vegetables, and herbs are placed along the tables. Fresh bread is broken and shared, still warm from the oven. For the high table, there's the baked trout, roasted capons glazed with honey, and delicate pastries filled with spiced fruits. Lower tables receive simpler but no less satisfying fare, good bread, hearty stews, roasted root vegetables, and pitchers of small beer. The hall fills with the sounds of dining conversation and laughter, the clink of cups and knives, the occasional bark of a dog hoping for scraps. Torchlight and firelight combine to create a warm glow that softens every face. The tapestries seem to move in the flickering light, their woven hunters and horses appearing almost alive. Musicians in the gallery above strike up a gentle tune on lute and viol, their music floating through the hall like a blessing. The melody is old and familiar, one that has accompanied countless such meals, its notes weaving through conversation without overwhelming it. A young boy with a clear voice joins in, singing verses about autumn harvests and the turning of seasons. At the high table, conversation flows between bites. The Lord discusses the progress of autumn planting with his steward, ensuring that winter wheat has been sown in all the appropriate fields. The lady shares news from a letter received from her sister in a distant castle, speaking of marriages and births and the small joys that connect family across miles. Their children listen, learning the art of table conversation and the management of lands and household. Lower in the hall, knights share tales of tournaments past, their stories growing slightly more heroic with each telling. Servants exchange gossip and news, speaking of village matters and the small dramas that unfold in any close community. An old soldier, grizzled and scarred, instructs younger men-at-arms in some fine point of swordplay, using a knife and a piece of bread to demonstrate his point. The meal continues at an unhurried pace, each course savored, each cup refilled. There is no rush here, no reason to hurry through this communal gathering that marks the end of the working day and the beginning of evening rest. Outside, the rain intensifies slightly, its rhythm against the roof becoming a gentle percussion that somehow makes the warmth and light within seem even more precious. In the kitchens, work continues even as the meal progresses. Dirty vessels return from the hall, and scullery maids plunge them into wooden tubs of hot water heated over the kitchen fires. The clatter of washing and scrubbing provides its own rhythm. Meanwhile, cooks prepare simpler fare for the kitchen staff themselves. They'll eat once the hall is served, enjoying their own meal beside the kitchen fires. The head cook finally allows herself to rest, settling onto a stool near one of the hearths with a cup of spiced wine and a trencher of bread soaked in meat juices. Her feet ache from standing all day, but there's satisfaction in knowing the meal was well received. Her apprentices and helpers continue their work around her, understanding that she's earned this moment of repose. Back in the great hall, as the meal winds toward its conclusion, the Lord rises and thanks the assembly for their company. He offers a toast to the harvest just gathered and the winter stores that will see them through to spring. Cups are raised, voices join in affirmation, and then the formal meal concludes. Some linger at the tables, continuing conversations, while others drift toward the great fireplace or begin making their way to their sleeping quarters. The lady and her attendants withdraw to the solar once more, climbing the stone stairs with measured grace. In their private chamber, the fire has been built up again, and candles have been lit in wall sconces and on the desk. The room glows with warm light, intimate and peaceful after the larger gathering in the hall below. Part 2. The castle settles into night. The great hall gradually empties as the evening deepens. Small groups disperse, their footsteps echoing softly through corridors as they make their way to various corners of the castle. The fire in the great hearth continues to burn, though a servant banks it carefully, rearranging the logs to ensure coals will glow through the night without blazing too high. The embers settle with soft crackling sounds, releasing occasional sparks that drift upward toward the shadowed beams before winking out. A few men-at-arms remain near the hearth, reluctant to leave its warmth for the cooler air of the barracks. They speak in low voices, sharing a last cup of ale and discussing the day's training exercises. One cleans his eating knife with a scrap of bread, while another stretches his legs toward the fire's warmth, easing muscles stiff from sword practice in the bailey. Their conversation is companionable and quiet, the easy talk of men who work together daily and have learned each other's ways. The rushes on the floor, compressed by many feet during the meal, release their herbal scent more strongly now. A servant moves through the hall with a besom broom, sweeping scraps toward the edges where the castle dogs eagerly consume whatever falls their way. The old hound by the fireplace lifts his head, sniffs the air with interest, then settles back down, too comfortable to move unless something truly worthwhile appears. In the solar above, the lady and her attendants prepare for the night. The room has taken on an even cozier atmosphere as darkness presses against the glass windows. The curtains have been drawn across, heavy fabric that blocks drafts and creates an enclosed feeling of warmth and safety. Additional candles have been lit, their flames steady in the still air, multiplied by reflection in a polished silver mirror that hangs on one wall. The lady sits while one of her women carefully removes the wimple and veil that have covered her hair throughout the day. Her dark hair falls loose, and her attendant begins the nightly ritual of brushing, drawing a wooden comb through the length with long, gentle strokes. Another woman warms a sleeping gown near the fire, ensuring the linen will be cozy when donned. The fabric absorbs the heat, becoming almost too hot to touch, but it will feel wonderful against skin as the night's chill deepens. Conversation among the women turns to domestic matters, embroidery patterns being considered, herbs needed for the still room, a servant's upcoming marriage that will require preparations. Their voices are soft and comfortable, the talk of women who have worked together for years and have developed easy friendship alongside their formal roles. One of the younger ladies stifles a yawn, covering her mouth politely, and the others smile with understanding. The Lord, meanwhile, has retired to his private chamber adjacent to the solar. This room serves as both office and personal retreat, lined with wooden chests containing documents, account rolls, and the various papers required to manage his estates. A clerk has left the day's final correspondence on the desk for his review, a letter from a neighboring lord, the steward's accounting of grain stores, a request from the village priest for roof repairs to the church. He settles into his chair, a high-backed seat, cushioned with thick padding and covered in leather worn soft by years of use. The chamber's fire has been built up, and a branch of candles illuminates the desk with steady light. He breaks the seal on the first letter, unfolding the parchment with care. The handwriting is familiar, an old friend and occasional hunting companion writing to propose a visit after the first snow. The Lord smiles, making a mental note to discuss the invitation with his lady. A page enters quietly, bearing a cup of warmed, spiced wine. The boy has learned to move with minimal disturbance, appearing when needed and withdrawing when his service is complete. The wine is fragrant with cinnamon and cloves, warmed to just the right temperature, sweet and fortifying. The Lord accepts it with a nod of thanks, and the page withdraws, closing the heavy door softly behind him. In the guest chambers, the merchant and his apprentice have been given a comfortable room in one of the towers. The chamber is modestly sized, but well appointed, with a proper bed dressed in clean linen and woolen blankets, a smaller pallet for the apprentice, and a brazier glowing with coals to warm the space. A servant has brought them a ewer of water for washing, and a small tray of bread and cheese in case hunger strikes before morning. The merchant removes his traveling boots with a grateful sigh, flexing toes that have been confined since dawn. He and his apprentice have been on the road for 3 days, moving between markets and stopping at various estates to offer their wares. The safety and comfort of the castle feel like luxury after nights spent in lesser accommodations. The boy apprentice, no more than 14, examines the room with wide eyes, clearly impressed by the appointments despite their relative simplicity. They prepare for sleep with the efficiency of experienced travelers. The merchant checks that their goods are secure, his coin purse hidden in an inner pocket, his most valuable merchandise locked in the reinforced chest they've carried from the stables. The apprentice shakes out their traveling cloaks and hangs them on pegs near the brazier, hoping the warmth will dry any dampness absorbed from the rain. Both will sleep in their day shirts, adding extra layers for warmth rather than donning separate sleeping clothes. In the barracks where the men-at-arms sleep, a different atmosphere prevails. This long chamber houses 24 soldiers in sturdy beds, arranged along both walls. The men are accustomed to communal living and move through their evening routines with practiced coordination. Some have already claimed their beds and lie beneath rough woolen blankets, while others sit on the edges of their bunks, talking quietly or tending to small personal tasks. One soldier carefully oils a leather belt, working the treatment into the material with strong fingers. Another sharpens a knife, the whetstone making soft scraping sounds against the blade. A young recruit, still new to castle service, polishes his eating knife and spoon with more attention than necessary, nervous energy keeping him occupied. An older soldier watches with amusement, remembering his own early days of military service. The barracks fire smaller than those in the hall, but adequate to warm the space casts, moving shadows across the ceiling beams. A sergeant makes a final round, checking that weapons are properly stored and that all his men are accounted for. He exchanges a few words with those still awake, offers a gruff goodnight to the room generally, then retires to his own small chamber at the barracks end, a privacy that comes with his rank. Down in the kitchens, the day's work finally concludes. The last vessels have been scrubbed and put away, the great cauldrons cleaned and hung from their hooks, the work tables wiped down with damp cloths. The fires have been banked, but not extinguished coals will be kept alive through the night, ready to be rekindled at dawn when the cycle of cooking begins anew. The kitchen staff eat their own late supper around one of the hearths, sitting on benches and stools, passing bowls and cups between them. Their meal is simple but satisfying, thick pottage from the same pot that served the hall, good bread, cheese, and the scraps of roasted meat that didn't make it to the tables above. There's a special camaraderie among those who work together in the heat and chaos of the kitchens, and their conversation flows freely, punctuated by laughter and good-natured teasing. The head cook's assistant tells a story about a mishap during a feast years ago, when a serving boy tripped and sent an entire roasted peacock sliding across the hall floor. The memory has grown funnier with time, and even though most have heard the tale before, they laugh again at the telling. The scullery maid who turned the spit all afternoon rests her tired arms on the table, listening with a smile, grateful to be off her feet at last. Eventually, even the kitchen staff disperses to their sleeping quarters. Some of the women sleep in a chamber above the kitchens, warm from the heat rising through the floorboards. Others have small rooms in various parts of the castle, tucked into corners and alcoves. The men among them head to quarters near the stables or in the lower levels of the keep. Each carries a small candle or rushlight to guide their way through darkened corridors. In the stables, the horses have long since settled for the night. They stand quietly in their stalls, occasionally shifting weight or nosing at hay nets. The stable is dim, lit only by a single lantern hung near the door, but the darkness doesn't disturb the animals. They're comfortable here, warm in their thick coats with plenty of hay for bedding and fodder. The stable cat has caught an unwary mouse and now grooms herself on a hay bale, purring with satisfaction. The groom, who sleeps in a small room above the stables, makes a final check before retiring. He moves quietly among the stalls, speaking soft words to the horses, checking that all is secure. A young colt in the end stall nickers at his approach, hoping for treats, but settles when the groom scratches behind his ears and murmurs reassurances. The stable door is barred against the night, and the groom climbs the ladder to his quarters, a modest space but his own, warm from the animal's heat rising below. On the battlements, the watch continues through the deepening night. The rain has steadied into a gentle but persistent fall, pattering against stone and pooling in low spots along the wall. The guards have established their pattern, 2 men walking the walls in opposite directions, meeting at intervals to exchange a few words before continuing their circuits. Their wool cloaks shed most of the rain, and they've learned to find what shelter exists in the lee of towers and behind the crenellated walls. One guard pauses at an embrasure, looking out over the darkened landscape. The village below is nearly invisible now, just the faintest suggestion of darker shapes against dark fields. No lights show. The villagers have banked their fires and sought their beds, rising with the sun as they always do. The forest beyond is a black mass against the slightly lighter sky. Nothing moves except the rain and the wind stirring the autumn bare branches. His companion joins him, sharing the momentary respite from the rain. They speak little, comfortable with silence, merely sharing presence against the isolation of night watch. Below them, they can hear water running through the castle's drainage channels, carrying rainwater from roofs and courtyards out through gaps in the walls. The sound is steady and somehow soothing, the castle managing the weather as it has managed countless storms before. In the chapel, the last candles flicker on the altar. The young monk who serves as chaplain's assistant has returned to say his private prayers before retiring. He kneels on the cold stone floor, hands clasped before him, lips moving in silent devotion. The stained glass windows are black now, their jeweled colors invisible until daylight returns. The chapel feels vast in the darkness, its vaulted ceiling lost in shadow, but the monk finds comfort in the space's sacred purpose. He completes his prayers and rises, genuflecting toward the altar before withdrawing. He leaves a few candles burning. The altar must never be completely dark, but extinguishes others, conserving the precious beeswax. His own small cell adjoins the chapel, a narrow room containing a straw pallet, a wooden cross on the wall, and a shelf holding a precious illuminated prayer book. It's austere but sufficient for his needs, and he's grateful for the calling that gives his life meaning. Throughout the castle, chambers and corridors grow quiet as people settle into sleep. In servants' quarters, tired bodies find rest in simple beds and pallets. In the tower rooms, guards off duty sleep soundly, knowing others watch. In the solar, the lady finally retires to the great bed, its curtains drawn to create a warm private space. Her husband joins her, the day's responsibilities set aside until morning. The children of the household, a boy of 8 and a girl of 6, sleep in a smaller chamber near their parents, watched over by a nurse who dozes in a chair by their fire. The children lie in a shared bed, nestled under thick quilts, their breathing deep and peaceful. The nurse, an older woman who has cared for 3 generations of this family, keeps her vigil even in sleep, attuned to any sound that might indicate a child's need. In the scriptorium, a small chamber where the castle's few books and documents are kept, everything lies quiet and orderly. A clerk who works here during daylight hours has left his workspace immaculate parchments weighted and stored, quills cleaned and placed in their holder, ink pots sealed against drying. A locked chest contains the most valuable manuscripts, including an illuminated psalter that is the castle's greatest treasure. The room smells of parchment, ink, and the beeswax used to seal letters. The castle's many storage chambers, pantries, butteries, granaries, and cellars rest in darkness, their contents safely locked away. The pantler, responsible for the bread supplies, has counted and checked before retiring, ensuring that tomorrow's needs can be met. The butler has secured the barrels of ale and wine in the buttery, satisfied that the castle's drink supplies are adequate for the season ahead. The chamberlain has made his final rounds, checking that all is secure and orderly throughout the household. In the undercroft, the lower storage level built into the castle's foundation, barrels of salted meat and fish rest in cool darkness alongside sacks of dried peas and beans. Hanging from hooks in the ceiling are the autumn's harvest of herbs, dried and bundled, their scents mingling faintly even in their dormant state. Onions and garlic hang in braided ropes, and rounds of cheese age slowly on wooden shelves. These stores represent security, the promise that winter will not bring hunger. The rain continues its gentle percussion against the castle's stones and tiles. Water runs from the steep roof pitches, cascades down walls, and flows through carefully constructed channels designed to carry it away from the foundations. The castle's builders, generations ago, understood water and drainage, creating a fortress that would endure weather as well as siege. The rain is welcome. It fills the wells, waters the winter wheat, and promises that drought will not threaten the coming year. Inside, the castle is a collection of warm, dry spaces wrapped in protective stone. The great hall's fire burns low but steady, its glow sufficient to illuminate the space with soft red light. The hound by the hearth dreams, paws twitching as he chases phantom rabbits through sleeping memory. The tapestries sway slightly in drafts that penetrate even the most carefully maintained fortress, their woven figures seeming to move in the dancing firelight. A servant makes a quiet round through the main corridors, checking that torches haven't burned too low, replacing those that need refreshing. His footsteps echo softly as he moves through the castle's geography, climbing stairs, walking passages, attending to this late-night duty with calm efficiency. He's performed this task for years and could navigate these halls in complete darkness if necessary. He pauses occasionally, listening to the rain, feeling the castle's peaceful settling around him. In the Lord's chamber, sleep has claimed the master and lady of the castle. They lie in the great bed, surrounded by drawn curtains that create a small, warm world within the larger room. Their breathing is deep and regular, the sleep of those whose consciences are clear and whose responsibilities have been met for the day. The chamber's fire burns low, coals glowing red in the darkness, providing just enough warmth to keep the chill at bay. The merchant in the guest chamber also sleeps, grateful for the day's safe conclusion and the comfort of the bed. His apprentice has been asleep for an hour already, exhausted by travel and lulled by the rain's steady rhythm. Their packs and goods rest secure, and they'll wake to the safety of another day before resuming their journey toward the next market town. In the barracks, most of the men-at-arms sleep soundly, though a few struggle with restlessness or discomfort. One man's snoring provides a steady counterpoint to the rain, a sound his companions have learned to ignore. The young recruit lies awake, still adjusting to the sounds and rhythms of military life, but even he will doze eventually, overtaken by the warmth and the long day's exertions. Warmth and the long day's exertions. The guards on the battlements change watch at midnight, fresh men ascending to relieve those who have stood the first half of the night. The exchange is brief, a few words about the weather, confirmation that all remains quiet, and then the relieved guards gratefully descend to warmth and rest while their replacements take up the vigil. The rain shows no sign of stopping, but it remains gentle, more blessing than hardship. In the darkness beyond the castle walls, the world sleeps. The village lies silent, its inhabitants deep in the sleep that follows hard labor. In the forests, deer shelter under thick pines, and foxes curl in their dens. Night birds hunt silently through the rain, and badgers root through the undergrowth. The river runs higher with the rain's contribution, its voice a distant murmur that speaks of autumn's abundance and the cycles that govern all living things. The castle stands through it all solid, enduring, protective. Its walls have witnessed centuries of such nights, and will witness centuries more. Within those walls, people sleep in safety, warm and dry, surrounded by community and continuity. The stones themselves seem to breathe with the slow rhythm of ages, patient and strong, offering shelter to all who dwell within their embrace. Part 3. The deep watches of the night. The hours between midnight and dawn hold a special quality within the castle walls. This is when night reaches its deepest point, when sleep claims nearly everyone, and when silence settles most completely over stone corridors and sleeping chambers. The rain continues its steady whisper against the castle, but even its voice seems softer now, as though respecting the profound quiet of these small hours. In the great hall, the fire has burned down to a bed of glowing coals. The embers pulse with deep red light, occasionally sending up a small flame when a pocket of resin ignites, or when shifting wood releases trapped gases. The heat radiating from the fireplace remains substantial, keeping the vast space surprisingly warm despite the autumn chill pressing against the walls. The old hound has shifted position in his sleep, now lying on his side with legs stretched toward the warmth, completely relaxed in the safety of his familiar territory. The servant responsible for maintaining the hall's fire makes a quiet visit, moving with practiced stealth to avoid disturbing the few who sleep in the hall. 2 men-at-arms have claimed spots near the hearth, preferring its warmth to the barracks, and they sleep soundly on pallets laid directly on the rush-covered floor. The servant adds a few logs to the coals, placing them carefully to avoid sudden flames or loud cracking. The wood catches slowly, beginning its transformation from solid timber to warmth and light. Above in the solar, the lady sleeps deeply, her breathing slow and peaceful. The bed curtains create a small sanctuary of warmth, holding close the heat from the nearby fireplace and from the sleeping bodies themselves. The woolen blankets and furs piled atop the feather mattress provide weight and comfort, cocooning her in softness. Beyond the curtains, the chamber fire has burned very low, just a glow of coals that will last until morning, when a servant will come to rebuild it. One of the lady's attendants, sleeping in an adjacent smaller chamber, stirs briefly in her sleep and then settles again. Her room is modest, a narrow bed, a chest for her belongings, a small table with a water ewer, but it's her own space, a privacy that many in the castle lack. A crucifix hangs on the wall above her bed, barely visible in the darkness, a source of comfort and devotion. The rain patters against her shuttered window, a sound that has become so constant she no longer consciously hears it. In the Lord's chamber, he too sleeps soundly, though part of his mind remains alert in the way of men who bear responsibility. A sudden noise or unusual sound would wake him instantly, but the familiar sounds of the castle at night ring, distant footsteps of the watch, the settling of timbers, these allow him to rest. His hand rests on the shoulder of his sleeping wife, an unconscious gesture of connection and protection, even in sleep. The children in their chamber sleep the profound sleep of the young. The boy lies sprawled across his portion of the bed, covers kicked partially off despite the cool air. His nurse, dozing in her chair, rouses just enough to notice and rises stiffly to pull the blankets back over him. She tucks them gently around both children, her movements automatic from years of such nocturnal ministrations. The girl sleeps curled on her side, clutching a small cloth doll that has been her companion since infancy. The nurse adds a small log to their fire before settling back into her chair, pulling her own shawl more tightly around her shoulders. In the guest chamber, the merchant lies on his back, snoring gently, his sleep the deep rest of a man whose travels have taught him to appreciate a good bed when he finds one. His apprentice has rolled onto his side on the smaller pallet, one arm hanging off the edge, completely still in exhausted slumber. The brazier's coals have faded to a dim glow, but the room retains enough warmth to remain comfortable. Their traveling cloaks, hung near the heat source, have dried completely and will be ready for the road when they depart after breaking their fast. The barracks are almost completely dark, the fire there having burned to mere embers. The sergeant sleeps in his small private room, but he too remains partially alert, conditioned by years of military service to wake at any disturbance. The soldiers in the main chamber create a symphony of breathing, some deep and rhythmic, others lighter, a few producing soft snores. The young recruit has finally found sleep, his body having surrendered to exhaustion despite his mind's earlier restlessness. One soldier wakes briefly, needing to relieve himself. He rises quietly, wrapping a blanket around his shoulders against the chill, and makes his way to the garderobe, the castle's latrine, built into the thickness of the outer wall. The small chamber is cold and drafty, positioned over a shaft that drops to a pit far below, but it serves its purpose. He returns quickly to his bed, grateful to burrow back under the covers and reclaim the warmth his body had created in the wool and straw mattress. On the battlements, the guards continue their patient vigil. The rain has finally begun to ease, though clouds still obscure any stars. The men are thoroughly damp despite their cloaks, and they look forward to the end of their watch when they can descend to warmth and dryness. They've been talking intermittently to stay alert, sharing stories and observations, but now they fall into companionable silence, each occupied with his own thoughts. One guard thinks of his wife and children in the village below, sleeping in their cottage while he stands watch. His wages from castle service provide security for his family, and he takes pride in his role despite its discomforts. His companion, younger and unmarried, dreams of advancement perhaps to sergeant, or even to a position among the Lord's household knights if he proves himself worthy. Both men stamp their feet occasionally, maintaining circulation and shift position to ease muscles stiffened by standing and walking in the cold. Below in the inner courtyard, water has pooled where drainage is less perfect. The well's stone rim glistens weightly, and the cobblestones shine when the guard's lantern light falls upon them. Nothing moves in the courtyard except the rain and occasional wind-blown leaves that skitter across the stones. The chapel's small bell tower rises dark against the clouded sky, its bell silent until morning prayers call the faithful to their devotions. Inside the chapel itself, the altar candles continue their steady burning. The monk in his adjacent cell sleeps lightly, accustomed to waking for the night offices that monastic tradition requires. Even here in a castle chapel, rather than a monastery, he maintains the rhythm of prayers that divide the night matins in the deep darkness, lauds as dawn approaches. His small cell is cold, asceticism being part of his spiritual discipline, but he has a rough blanket and finds warmth enough in his faith. The scriptorium nearby remains untouched, its precious manuscripts secure in their locked chest. Dust motes would dance in sunlight here, but in darkness they rest invisible on every surface. The writing desk holds tools ready for tomorrow's work, the careful copying of documents, the composition of letters, the maintenance of household accounts. The parchment awaits the scribe's practiced hand, the ink waits in its sealed pot, and the quills rest sharp and ready. In the castle's lowest levels, the storage chambers rest in complete darkness and profound silence. The undercroft's thick walls and low ceiling create a space that seems removed from time itself. Here the temperature remains constant year-round, cool but not freezing, perfect for the preservation of foodstuffs. The salted meat and cheese, the dried herbs and stored grains, all rest in patient stillness, fulfilling their purpose simply by existing, by representing security against winter's lean months. A mouse ventures across the floor of the grain storage, tiny feet pattering almost inaudibly. It finds a few scattered kernels of wheat, overlooked in the day's activities, and sits up on its haunches to eat, whiskers twitching. Somewhere in the shadows, the castle cat may be hunting, but the mouse feeds quickly and scurries back to the safety of a crack in the wall. Such small dramas play out constantly in the castle's hidden places, life continuing its eternal patterns regardless of human awareness. The stables remain quiet, horses dozing on their feet in the way of their kind. Occasionally one shifts weight or shakes its head, causing bridles to jingle softly. The groom in his chamber above sleeps soundly, warm under his blankets, the familiar sounds of the animals below providing unconscious reassurance. A barn owl nests in the stable rafters, and she too sleeps, her hunting complete for the night, crop full from a successful evening's work in the nearby fields. In the kitchens, banked coals glow beneath ash in all three hearths. These fires will not be allowed to die completely. Rekindling from scratch takes time and effort that can be saved by maintaining coals through the night. The fire tender made her final round before seeking her own bed, ensuring each hearth was properly banked, neither at risk of dying nor of flaring dangerously. The kitchen stands ready for tomorrow's labors, cleaned and organized, waiting for the return of heat and activity and the production of meals that sustain the castle's inhabitants. The great cauldrons hang silent and empty, their iron sides scrubbed clean. The work tables bear no trace of today's chopping and mixing. The bread ovens stand cool and dark, resting before tomorrow's firing. But the room still holds the faint ghost of 1,000 meals bred and roasted meat. Herbs and spices, the fundamental scent of cooking that has permeated every timber and stone over decades of continuous use. Above the kitchens, in the chamber where some of the women sleep, 4 servants rest in 2 beds, sharing warmth in the practical manner of working people. They sleep deeply, their bodies recovering from the day's hard labor. Tomorrow will bring more of the same, hauling water, scrubbing vessels, turning spits, kneading dough, but tonight they rest, and rest is sweet after honest work. Their dreams, if they dream, are simple ones, reflecting the uncomplicated patterns of their lives. Throughout the castle, small sounds continue despite the late hour. Timbers creak as temperature changes cause wood to expand or contract. Shutters rattle slightly in wind gusts. Water drips from rain-soaked thatch and stone. Mice rustle in their hidden highways through the walls. The castle breathes and settles, alive in its fashion, a complex organism that shelters all who dwell within it. In a tower room, a guard off duty wakes from an unpleasant dream. He lies still for a moment, orienting himself, then relaxes as familiar surroundings register. The tower room houses 4 guards, and he can hear the breathing of his companions, see the faint glow of coals in their brazier. He turns onto his other side, punches his straw pillow into a more comfortable shape, and closes his eyes again. The dream fades, replaced by the peaceful reality of stone walls and security. The rain has nearly stopped now, reduced to an occasional sprinkle. The clouds begin to break, and through gaps appears the faintest suggestion of stars. The guards on the battlements notice the change and feel their spirits lift. A clear dawn will be more pleasant than a rainy one, and they've only an hour or 2 before relief arrives. They continue their walking pattern, but with renewed energy, knowing the end of their watch approaches. In the village below the castle, the first stirrings of waking begin. A baker rises in darkness to begin the day's bread, banking his oven to life and beginning the ancient ritual of mixing flour and water and salt and leaven. His movements are quiet, practiced, efficient. Within the hour, his ovens will be hot and the first loaves will be set to bake. The scent of fresh bread will drift through the village, one of the first signals that a new day begins. A farmer wakes and lies listening to the rain's cessation. He thinks about the fields, about the winter wheat now germinating in soil softened by the rain, about the plowing yet to be completed before the ground freezes. His wife sleeps beside him, and his children rest in the loft above. He's in no hurry to rise. Dawn is still distant, but his mind has begun engaging with the day ahead. Within the castle walls, however, nearly everyone still sleeps soundly. These hours before dawn are the deepest for sleeping, when the body rests most profoundly and dreams come most vividly. The lord dreams of hunting, riding through autumn forests with hawks circling overhead. The lady dreams of her childhood home, walking through gardens long vanished. The children dream the formless, colorful dreams of youth, untroubled by care or responsibility. The merchant dreams of ledgers and profits, of successful deals and satisfied customers. His apprentice dreams of home, of his mother's cooking and his father's workshop. The soldiers dream of varied things, some of battles past, some of sweethearts left in distant villages, some simply of rest and peace. The servants dream of festivals and holy days, of marriages and christenings, of the small celebrations that break the rhythm of labor. In the solar's great bed, the Lord stirs briefly and draws his wife closer. She murmurs something inaudible and settles against him. The bed curtains create their private world, warm and dark and safe. Beyond the curtains, the chamber fire has burned to nothing but the faintest glow. But the morning servant will come soon to rebuild it. The lady's embroidery rests on its frame where she left it, the needle stuck into the fabric, waiting for daylight and her return. The castle chaplain wakes in his cell, knowing without seeing that the time for matins approaches. This is his discipline and his calling to pray while others sleep, to maintain the conversation with the divine that never ceases. He rises from his hard bed, pulls on his robe over his sleeping shirt, and pads barefoot across cold stone to the chapel. The candles on the altar still burn, providing enough light to navigate by. He kneels before the altar and begins his prayers, his voice barely above a whisper. The Latin words flow smoothly, memorized through years of repetition, their meaning deep in his heart, even when his tired mind might struggle with translation. This is the rhythm of monastic life, the pattern of prayer that divides the night into sacred portions. He prays for the castle's inhabitants, for the Lord and his family, for the safety of all who sleep within these walls. As he prays, the first hint of coming dawn begins to appear. The darkness beyond the stained glass windows seems fractionally less complete. The stars, visible now through breaking clouds, seem a touch less bright. It's the barest suggestion of change, but the chaplain notices it. He's prayed through enough nights to recognize the signs. Dawn is still perhaps 2 hours distant, but its approach has begun. On the battlements, the guards also notice the subtle shift. The quality of darkness begins to change, though full light remains far off. They know their relief will come soon after dawn, and they maintain their vigil with the patience of practice. One guard produces a small piece of bread from inside his cloak, saved from the evening meal, and shares it with his companion. They chew slowly, finding comfort in the simple act of eating. In the great hall, the fire has caught the logs added earlier and burns with renewed vigor. The flames cast dancing shadows across the high ceiling beams, and the warmth spreads through the space. The sleeping men-at-arms near the hearth benefit without waking, their bodies unconsciously appreciating the increased heat. The old hound stirs, lifts his head, yawns hugely, showing impressive teeth, then settles back into sleep. The first bird begins to sing somewhere beyond the castle walls. It's a tentative sound, a lone voice testing whether the time is right. Other birds will join soon, building toward the dawn chorus, but for now, it's just this one brave singer announcing the coming day. The sound is faint, easily lost in the rain's remnants and the wind's whisper, but it's there, the ancient signal that darkness never lasts forever. In the servant quarters, the first workers begin to wake. These are the people whose duties begin earliest: the fire lighters, the water carriers, those who must prepare for the day before others rise. They wake in darkness, accustomed to it, and begin dressing by feel and long familiarity. A woman pulls on her wool gown and apron, fastens her belt, covers her hair. A man pulls on his tunic and hose, belts his knife, and prepares for the day's work. The fire tender is among the first to rise. She moves through the castle with a tinder box and a small lantern, visiting each banked fire. In the great hall, she adds wood to the growing flames. In the kitchens, she uncovers the coals and feeds them carefully, rebuilding each hearth fire to useful strength. She works efficiently, her movements practiced, beginning the castle's return to waking life. The kitchen fires catch and grow, their light pushing back the darkness. Soon the head cook will rise and begin directing the preparation of the morning meal. Bread will be baked, porridge prepared, small beer drawn from barrels. The castle will wake gradually, different people at different times, but all moving toward the shared goal of another day. In the stables, the groom wakes and immediately knows the rain has stopped. The sound that lulled him to sleep has ceased. He rises and descends to check on his charges. The horses stir at his familiar footsteps, beginning to anticipate their morning feed. He speaks softly to them, moving from stall to stall, checking that all are well. The stable cat appears from her hunting, rubbing against his legs, and he scratches her behind the ears before measuring out oats for the horses. The castle stands at the cusp between night and day, most of its inhabitants still sleeping, but the first stirrings of waking begun. The darkness holds, but begins to retreat. The fires grow, pushing warmth through stone corridors. The rain has passed, leaving the world washed clean. A new day approaches, bringing with it the continuation of patterns ancient and enduring: work and rest, duty and peace, the endless cycle of castle life. And so our night within the castle walls comes to its gentle close. We've walked together through stone corridors warmed by firelight, listened to the rain's peaceful whisper against ancient walls, and found comfort in the timeless rhythms of medieval life. From the great hall's blazing hearth to the quiet chambers where sleep claimed lord and servant alike, we've discovered that peace lives in simple things: crackling fires, warm bread, the safety of strong walls, and the company of those who share our shelter. Thank you for spending this evening with Medieval Sleep Tales. If you found rest and comfort in this journey, please like this video and subscribe to join us for more peaceful escapes into the medieval world. Share your thoughts in the comments below. We love hearing which moments brought you the most tranquility. May your own rest be as peaceful as a night within castle walls, and may your dreams be filled with firelight and gentle rain. Until next time, from Medieval Sleep Tales, sweet medieval dreams.